everybody. I'm Terri Edwards with EatPlant-Based, and I'm a licensed Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Thank you for joining us for this webinar today. The title of the webinar is Plant-Based Nutrition Basics and Getting Started. It's a program that I do regularly here in North Carolina as well as in South Carolina, usually at medical facilities like hospitals and doctors' offices, but I also do it at other venues. It's a great opportunity with this technology that we have now to be able to share it with people in other areas that aren't able to come and attend the ones that I do locally. So thanks for joining us. This is going to be a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and get that on our screen share. Again, I'm Terri, and this is going to be about a 45-minute presentation, and I hope that wherever you are in your journey, some of you are probably new to plant-based nutrition and just trying to find information. Others of you may be veterans and have been doing this for many years and just need a little bit more encouragement. Whatever reason has brought you here, I hope that you will learn a little bit and be able to be inspired and encouraged to continue your journey. Before we get started, I have to do the disclaimers as far as the information I'm about to provide is not intended to counsel in nutrition, diagnose disease. If you have questions specific to your health care, please contact your healthcare provider and discuss those with them. This is just for informational purposes only. This is a picture of me in 2012. I was 45 years old, and this is me at my daughter's college graduation. As you can see, I was a lot heavier at that point, about 55 pounds heavier than I am now. But the weight was not my biggest problem. I had a lot of medical issues going on. I had high cholesterol that I had actually developed that as a teenager. At 19 years old, found out I had high cholesterol, even though I was only 110 pounds, very physically active. High cholesterol does run in my family, so that was the only reasoning behind it that I could see at that point, but it was running in the 220s in my teens. Over time, I developed high blood pressure as well. This would have probably been in my mid-30s. I had adult acne. Had acne as a teenager, but I didn't outgrow it. I had to be on an antibiotic for years called doxycycline to help control my adult acne. I had fibrocystic breast disorder. Many of you ladies may know what that is, where you find lumps that come and go. I found them all the time. Found my first lump when I was 19, and by the time I was 30, I had had 2 mammograms and 1 ultrasound for suspicious lumps. It got to the point where I was afraid to even do exams because I knew it was going to find something and be scary for me. So that was a battle that I was fighting. I had developed sleep problems and was taking melatonin or Tylenol PM every single night to go to sleep. I had hormonal issues. Thyroid was a different story. There was no thyroid history with me or anybody in my family that I know of, but I was putting on makeup one morning in the mirror, and as I was putting it on my neck, I found a lump, which sent me, of course, to the doctor. There were biopsies and ultrasounds and medications. Nothing worked. So I had surgery to remove the nodule along with half of my thyroid, and I thought I was going to be on medication for my entire life, but back then they thought that you would. But since that time, I read and found out and worked with an endocrinologist, because as long as you have at least a portion of your thyroid left, there is a possibility that you will not have to be on thyroid medication. And thankfully, after working with my endocrinologist, we found out I'm one of those people. So I was able to come off of medications. But even with all these medical issues, they were not my biggest issue. My biggest problem was joint pain and swelling. It had developed when I was in my mid-30s, around 35, and it started in my hands and progressively worsened over the next 10 years. My shoulder, my knees, my back, so many things got involved. Finally, when I would sit down at my desk or in front of the TV for 10-15 minutes. When I would stand up, the bottoms of my feet had become involved, and so it was very painful to stand and try to walk. I was taking ibuprofen every single day, well above the recommended daily dosages, just to cope, just to get by. It's what I had to do. And I knew that that was terrible for my liver and my kidneys, but I had nothing else. Even with all kinds of doctor's visits, nothing was helping. So that's what I was doing. I want to back up for just a minute, though, because my weight problem did not start until I was in my later 20s. I had my daughter in 91, and I gained 70 pounds with the pregnancy, which is not a good idea. And from that point on, I struggled with my weight. And during the mid-90s, I thought I had found the answer. That's what I call my exercise warrior Terri days, where I began exercising my butt off, literally, because I was walking or jogging 50 plus miles a week and riding my bike 20 to 40 miles a week. I was working out 2.5 hours at least every day, 6 days a week. And I did find a way to control my weight. I was in my mid-20s, and I was working myself to death in order to keep that weight off. I didn't necessarily love that much working out, but it was working as far as keeping the weight under control. But then about 6 years into this, I realized that I was still working out just as hard, but that my weight was actually going up a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And I came across an article that said as we age, our metabolism slows down. And then when that happens, we're either going to have to increase the intensity or the duration of our exercise in order to continue to maintain our weight. And I thought, what the heck? Because I'm already exercising myself to death. How can I add it on? So I didn't stop exercising immediately, but as that scale started going up, I became discouraged, and over time I did stop. Other than walking, I've been a walker for over 30 years. Even during my sickest time, we live in North Carolina on a lot of land, and I always walk my dog at least once a day, most of the time twice a day, and I did that even when I was sick. So that never changed. I was always walking, but it wasn't controlling my weight. And so as I stopped the intense exercise, I began yo-yo dieting. I meant to mention too, this is me in Shape magazine in July 1998. Not on the cover, of course, but over here I'm sharing what I thought was the truth as far as telling everybody how to keep the weight off by exercising yourself to death. I'm much older and wiser now, but at the time, that's where I was. And then I began the yo-yo dieting. As you can see, at Suzanne Summers, which is really like a paleo type of a diet, and Atkins and Eat Right for Your Blood Type. I'm ashamed to say that I did try that, but I did. There's no science based in that, so definitely wouldn't recommend it. But I lost some weight. I lost 15 to 20 pounds with each one of these. Stayed on each one for a few months, but it never answered my medical issues. I lost a little weight, but it never addressed my joint pain or my high cholesterol or anything else. But then my daughter asked me to watch the documentary Forks Over Knives, and I hope some of you have seen this. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's available on Netflix, in your library. It's even available often on YouTube. But I finally watched this documentary. My daughter asked me for a whole year to watch it. She kept asking, but I didn't know what it was about, so I put it off. And when I finally watched it, I was shocked to see the information provided that there were 40, 50 years of research that showed that plant-based nutrition could prevent and reverse chronic disease, much of what I was dealing with. But I had never heard of it from my doctors with all the doctor's visits. This was new information, but it was compelling. My husband watched, he didn't watch the whole thing with me. He actually told me he wasn't going to watch it that evening. And I said, I don't care if you watch it because I really don't want to watch it either. And so he had a game going on. But I was watching in the living room, and his game got delayed, and he kept coming to the kitchen to to get food, and he caught bits and pieces. And before I knew it, he was sitting in his chair watching some Forks Over Knives. He didn't watch it all. He went and watched his game, but when it was over, I went to him and said, I'm going to try this for 4 weeks. I'm convinced enough with the information that I'm going to try it for 4 weeks. And he said, I'm going to try it with you. He was convinced enough from what he had seen that he said the food had to taste good. That was the only thing. And so we began the next day with breakfast, and that's what started our journey. We did it at 100% because that's the only way I felt like I would know what, if anything, this was capable of doing for me. 2.5 weeks in, the first things that I noticed were that I was sleeping better without taking Tylenol PM or melatonin, and my skin was clearing up without the medication. Those were the first things. And then the next thing, 3.5 weeks in, my husband came home. I was in the kitchen floor on my hands and knees. He thought I had lost my mind because I had my head in the refrigerator and I was throwing things over my shoulder. I had a plastic bin behind me, a trash can, and a cardboard box because I was sorting. I was give away, throw away, donate. I was convinced that the food in my kitchen was what was making me sick, and I wanted it out immediately. So I cleaned out that refrigerator. I cleaned out the freezer and the cabinets, and we began our journey 6 years ago, and we haven't looked back since. And I haven't felt better since I was in my 20s because I've been able to resolve so many of the issues that I was dealing with. The blood pressure, I'm completely medication free. Blood pressure. My husband didn't have a lot of medical issues other than his cholesterol ran high. His cholesterol was running over 300 at the time we began this, and he wasn't on medication. His doctor was pushing him to get on medication. But after being plant-based, his cholesterol came down from 307 to 157, and mine came down from around 220 something to 141. The acne cleared up. Everything else, as you can see, was resolved. My joints, and I lost 55 pounds by going plant-based. Most of all, though, I gained control over my body instead of it controlling me. This is a picture of me before and me after. This is a 6-month period. Like I said, we hit it at 100%. I saw great results. And about 8 weeks in, my joints felt so much better that I took up yoga. So now, in addition to walking, because I walk my dog twice a day, even now, and now I do yoga 3 times a week at home. So that's my exercise routine. I don't have to kill myself working out hours upon hours a day, every day of the week. I do my walking, I do my yoga. It's my exercise and it's my stress management, and it is the key because nutrition is the key. Then the exercise can be moderate and enjoyable. After I started my journey, I wanted to share the information because my doctors hadn't shared any of this with me, even though I had been to so many visits. So I took the eCornell class with Dr. Colin Campbell's program at Cornell University and got my plant-based certification. And then I applied to the Physicians Committee to teach their Food for Life program. And I've been teaching since 2015. And I teach at medical facilities and all over at different venues, and I'm able to share the information with people and see lives changed on a regular basis. I also started my blog, EatPlant-Based.com. Hopefully many of you have seen it. If you haven't, check it out. We have over 300 recipes and articles, beginner's guides to help people get started with grocery shopping and eating out. So much information is there, and it's all free. So it's a great resource for you to be able to get some hand holding as you begin your journey. So I want to talk to you for just a minute about the state of health in the U.S. We know that we're a sick nation, but do you know what the #1 cause of death is in the United States? Probably guessed, it's heart disease. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in both men and women, and 800 deaths a year are from heart disease annually in the U.S. And in half of those cases, the first symptom is sudden death. People didn't even realize that they had heart disease and succumb to it. Another shocking figure is that 2 out of 3 12-year-olds in the U.S. have beginning stages of cholesterol damage to their arteries. That's shocking. And in 8% of those 12-year-olds, the damage is already more advanced. So our children are succumbing to beginning stages of cholesterol damage, even at such a young age, because of what we're eating. What about the second leading cause of death? Do you know what that is? Many of you probably are guessing it's cancer. 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will develop cancer in their lifetime. In 2018, 1.7 million new cancer cases diagnosed in the U.S. The National Cancer Institute says that 40% of all cancer deaths may be related to diet. And other reliable resources say that that figure could be much higher than 40%. It's shocking that so many of us do not realize what is hanging on the end of our fork could play such a big role in whether we develop a potentially fatal disease or not. We deal with other chronic illnesses, diabetes, type 2, obesity, autoimmune diseases. We are a very sick nation. But you might be saying that, unlike me, that just confessed that I did not love the intense exercise program to try to manage weight, that you may enjoy it. And I would like to suggest that fitness and health is 80% nutrition and 20% exercise and stress management. I love the saying that you cannot outrun your fork, because you can't. I tried it. It doesn't work. Speaking of being fit, back during the Vietnam and Korean Wars, autopsies were performed on hundreds of soldiers, both American soldiers and Asian soldiers. These were people who were killed in battle, and they were doing autopsies for research purposes. And the average age of the soldiers was 22 years old. And as you can imagine, these are not couch potatoes or people who are overweight. These are physically fit people, young people who are battle ready. So it was shocking to find out that upon autopsy, nearly 77% of the American soldiers had gross evidence of coronary artery disease, according to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. In comparison, see, that was the American soldiers. The Asian soldiers had a much lower rate of arterial disease. And these were people who were the same average age and the same average physical fitness. Why the huge difference in artery damage? I'd like to suggest diet. Major diet differences. The standard American diet of meat, dairy, eggs, and cheese versus the traditional Asian diet at that time of rice, vegetables, tofu. At that time, this would have been in the 50s and 60s, only 4% of the Asian diet was from animal products. That has changed over time. But for that particular time, this is what we were looking at with the diet differences. Historically, Asian countries have lower rates of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and other chronic diseases. And you might say, well, it's their genetics. Couldn't it be their genetics? And certainly genetics do play a role in it. But migratory studies show that when people move from one country to another, they adopt the chronic diseases of that country. The people that move to the U.S. from other countries are developing diabetes and heart disease and cancer. Now, their genes didn't change in their move. Their food and their lifestyle changed. Personally, I've had 2 people in my life who have moved from Asian countries and have developed chronic disease. One was many years ago, a friend who came from Japan and moved here and to go to school and stayed and developed some of the illnesses that we already talked about. Another was a coworker whose wife came from Thailand, and she was younger than me and very fit, thin, And within a year of being in the US, she had to go on to cholesterol and blood pressure medications. It was shocking to see the change in her health in such a sudden way. So, but now people from other countries aren't even having to move to the US. They're adopting our Western diet in their countries because McDonald's and Burger King and Kentucky Fried Chicken are coming to them. And so their disease rates are going up just as ours. The prevalence of diabetes in the 80s in Japan was only 1 to 5% of the population. By the 1990s, that figure for diabetes had gone up to 11 to 12%, staggering that with the diet changes and the food coming to them, they are getting sick just like us. They're adopting the standard American diet. Don't you just love that acronym, SAD, Standard American Diet, because it's so appropriate. It's the inflammation diet. When we are eating meat and cheese, dairy, and highly processed foods, levels of inflammation in the body go up. And short-term inflammation, such as after an injury, is normal and necessary. But long-term chronic inflammation in the body leads, such as from diet, leads to plaque buildup in our arteries, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and so many other chronic diseases. In contrast, a plant-based diet is an anti-inflammatory diet. It's naturally anti-inflammatory because it's full of fiber. Look at the colors in that food, full of fiber, antioxidants, phytonutrients, and low in inflammatory triggers such as saturated fat and endotoxins. In classes, we tell people to eat the rainbow. See these pictures? That is eating the rainbow. We're not talking about eating Skittles. We're talking about eating real food close to the plant. All these colors let you know that you're getting the many different phytonutrients that your body needs for healing and for working at an optimal level. Other possible benefits of a plant-based diet, things that we see often in classes, is lower cholesterol and blood pressure, healthier microbiome, which is your gut bacteria, better control of diabetes or even reversal of type 2 diabetes sometimes, relief from migraine headaches, so many things. Here are a few cases from plant-based classes that I teach, the Food for Life. The first one is Penny in Asheville. She sent me this picture side by side. After 1 year, she had lost 65 pounds. She had taken some of the Food for Life classes I taught at a medical facility in Asheville, and after only 4.5 months, her A1C fell from 6.4 to 5.5. Cholesterol lowered, she lost the weight, and she let me know that within a year, her doctor had taken her off of all of her medications and even removed diabetes, high blood pressure, and cholesterol from her diagnosis. So she was very excited. The other person is my sister, Drenda. And the funny thing with her is that she is 1.5 years older than me, suffered with the same medical issues that I did and even more. But she watched me transform my diet and my life for a whole year and never began to try to do it herself. And I asked her why. We get together on Sundays after church and at my mom's house. And I sat down one Sunday with her and asked her why. And she said it was because she hated vegetables and there was no way she could do it. And I said, surely to goodness you do not hate all vegetables. So we started with a list. And 2 things we knew that she liked: pickles and potatoes. I am not kidding, but that's where we started. But we found after talking for a few minutes, she didn't hate all vegetables. She hated most of them. I'm not going to kid you. But she liked enough. She liked rice. She liked some beans. She did not like mushrooms, still doesn't like mushrooms, but she liked enough to where she could do this. She would get enough variety. And so she got excited, left with that list, and started at 100%. And she saw results. She came off of all of her medications. And there's even a recipe on my blog now called Hearty Vegetable Soup. Guess who wrote that recipe? The vegetable hater. Yeah. She found that within about 3 weeks of changing her diet that her taste buds were changing. She also found out that she does like broccoli. Come to find out, when we were growing up, our mom and grandmother, whoever, they overcooked the broccoli to mush. She didn't like that, but she did like broccoli a little bit crisp and stir fry. So now she's a broccoli eater. She still doesn't like mushrooms, but she likes so many things that she never liked before, and she's regained her health. Another person is Kenny, our neighbor. We live in North Carolina on the end of a dead end road. Kenny and my husband have lived here their entire lives, and they've grown up together and been friends. They played men's softball together, and about 10 years ago, Kenny developed type 2 diabetes, and he had high blood pressure that was out of control. And so he started developing medical issues. And about 61, I think he had his first stroke. And I offered to help him at that time because he knew what I do for a living, but he's such a sweet man. But he did decline. He said, he thought he was going to be, it was a mild stroke, as mild as you could say. He didn't have any paralysis, though he did have lingering effects from it. My husband and I went on vacation in August of 2017, and when we came back, we found out Kenny had had a second stroke, and this time it was much worse. So I contacted Kenny's daughter, and I said, I'm about to get real pushy with your daddy, and I want to help him. She thanked me and said she appreciated it, but she didn't think that Kenny would make the changes because he was a meat eater. He loved his fast food. She just didn't think he would do it. And I said, well, I'm going to give it a try. We're about to find out. So I asked my husband what he thought I should make. I wanted to take Kenny some food. And my husband said to take barbecue sandwiches. Now, barbecue sandwiches for us are made from seitan and or soy curls. They're on my website. You can check those out. But he felt like Kenny might like those because that's one of my husband's favorite meals. So I made the barbecue sandwiches, and I took Kenny a copy of Forks Over Knives, the documentary. And when I went, I was shocked to find that he was partially paralyzed. When I went to his door, part of his face was paralyzed. His speech was very slurred. He was on a cane. He was in very bad shape. I gave him the barbecue sandwiches and told him that they were plant-based and that Mickey had said he would like them. I also gave him the documentary and asked him if he would watch it, and he said that he would through his slurred speech. The next day, I took more food. I did not think that he would have watched that within 24 hours, but he did. He said he watched it, and I asked him what he thought, and he said it was impressive. So I asked him if he would be willing to do this for 4 weeks to see if we could turn his health around, if I made all of his meals for 4 weeks, and he agreed. I looked around his kitchen. It was full of sodas and bags of processed foods and stuff. I said, all of this is going to have to go. You're going to have to hit this at 100%. Are you willing to do it? And he said yes. So a week and a half into it, Kenny was on 40 units of insulin, and a week and a half into changing to a plant-based diet, he was already having his medications reduced. Over time, his A1C fell from almost 9 to now it's running 6.0. I get phone calls from him every time he gets it checked because he calls me to let me know where his A1C is standing. He has control of his blood pressure for the first time in over a decade. He's running with excellent blood pressure, and he's gotten his life back. He went back to work. He's a chiropractor. He didn't think he would ever go back to work, but he has. He's regained his life. So this is another story that I love to share with people to show what is possible. So what exactly is plant-based diet? And people say, won't I starve on plants? A plant-based diet is the 4 new food groups. This is from the Physicians Committee: fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. The whole grains group could include rice, brown rice, millet, oats, barley. Whole grain pastas, whole grain breads are included. The legume group is beans, peas, and lentils. And of course, the vegetable group and the fruit group, those are self-explanatory, but these are the food groups that make up a plant-based diet. This is what it might look like on a pyramid. Personally, I would probably have my grains at the bottom. We eat a lot of grains, whole grains, complex carbs can actually help reverse type 2 diabetes and definitely control weight. First question I hear often from people in classes is, where will I get protein and calcium. We've been so led to believe that protein only comes from meat and calcium only comes from milk. But I ask people in classes to name the largest land-dwelling mammals that they can think of. They name things like elephants and rhinoceros and giraffe and hippopotamus. And I ask, what do these animals eat? They eat strictly plants. And if their huge bone structures and muscle structures can be maintained and thrive on plants, we should have no problem. All plants have protein and calcium. Here's a couple of professional plant-based athletes that are completely on plants, no meat, no dairy. The first one is Kendrick Ferris, Team USA's only male Olympic weightlifter for 2016. The other is Germany's strongest man, Patrick. He lifted with a yoke over 1,200 pounds and carried it 3.5 meters, holding the world record. Neither one of them looked protein deficient to me. These are plant-based vegan bodybuilders who brought home 32 medals from the 2017 Naturally Fit Games. Again, no deficiencies seen here. Now, your doctor may not be on board. I highly recommend finding one that is, because it makes it so much easier. But on average, it takes the medical community 15 plus years to catch up with the science. As we saw with smoking, it took 7,000 research papers before showing the link between cancer and cigarettes before the American Medical Association changed their stance. I love Dr. Michael Greger with nutritionfacts.org. He says you would think that maybe 6,000 papers would have been enough, but it just goes to show it takes time. No kidding. This is an ad from a medical journal back then for cigarettes, because evidently more doctors smoked Camels than other cigarettes. But that is the mentality that was going on back then. And the same thing it's happening with plant-based nutrition. Doctors in the medical community are coming in slowly. So many of them are eating plant-based, just as so many of them were smoking back then. It just takes time for things to change, but it is moving. The medical community is growing in support for plant-based nutrition. This is a picture of Dr. Kim Williams. He's the former president of the American College of Cardiology. He says there's two kinds of cardiologists, vegans and those who haven't read the data. Now, I don't particularly like to use the word vegan because vegan doesn't mean healthy. There are a lot of unhealthy vegan foods, sodas and chips and all kinds of things that are vegan, but they are not healthy. When we say plant-based, we're not doing meat and dairy, but we are eating closer to the plant. That's where the health benefits come into play. Kaiser Permanente, the nation's largest health plan in 2017, came on board recommending doctors to share plant-based nutrition with their patients. They said that you can change your nutrition and lifestyle to help treat and potentially reverse chronic medical conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and hypertension and diabetes. That's huge for them to come on board. In 2017, I was asked to be a part of this lifestyle medicine symposium with MAHEC, that's Mountain Area Health Education Center in Asheville, North Carolina. This was their first ever lifestyle symposium focused on plant-based nutrition. Dr. Michael Greger was a part of it as well. I did a plant-based cooking kitchen in it, and the MAHEC was overwhelmed with the response. MAHEC is a training facility for continuing education for medical care providers. They had 180 seats available for this symposium. Within weeks, it sold out, and they had 90 people, healthcare providers, on a waiting list that did not get in. That showed them that there is a huge interest in lifestyle medicine, particularly plant-based nutrition. So people say, how do I go about getting started then? I would love to have everybody go 100% like I did. That's where you can really see the benefits. But I understand that's overwhelming for some people. So if people are only going to do one thing to get started, I suggest get dairy in all forms, not just milk, but in all forms, yogurt and sour cream, all those things out of the diet, because countries that consume the most milk have the highest hip fracture rates. That lets us know about bone density. That's very contrary to what we've been taught, but that is what the research shows. Drinking milk does not make stronger bones. Milk is loaded with saturated fat and cholesterol. It's an inflammatory trigger for many people, and it raises IGF-1 levels, which is a hormone, insulin-like growth factor 1, in the body. And we know from research that high levels of IGF-1 cause cancer cells to spread. So we don't want that in our body. So I suggest getting dairy out. Another thing that you could do is add more vegetables and fruits and grains and beans to your diet, crowding out all the other bad stuff. You won't be hungry as much. Maybe start off by making one day a week a plant-based or a no meat day, a plant-based day, such as Meatless Monday. If you can go through one day with just doing breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks and get comfortable with that, then you can add in 2 days and continue going until you get to 7, and before you know it, you're completely plant-based. Watch documentaries like Forks Over Knives and some of the others that I'm about to show you to help encourage you and give you information that you need to know. Participate in Food for Life classes. There are Food for Life instructors in all over the United States and even abroad. So check out the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine's website and find a Food for Life instructor near you. This is some of the documentaries. There are many, but these are some that I highly recommend and like. And so you can find those, many of them on Netflix, or you may go to their website and purchase those. These are some books that I recommend. There are so many, but these are some that we use in classes. The diabetes book we use in our Food for Life diabetes series, and the Cancer Survivor is the one we use in our cancer series that I teach at cancer centers. And the Kickstart. There are so many books, but these are some that could get you started. I have plant-based starter kits for $27 on my website. You get a book of your choice, a set of 2 CDs, which are lectures, 17 lectures from Dr. Neil Barnard. He's the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, along with a folder filled with all kinds of starter information. So if you would like to get one of those, go to my website and look for starter kits. This is me teaching at a heart center in South Carolina. This is the Food for Life class that I did there. As you can see, there's lots of food, but we don't just make salads. This isn't a salad teaching class. We have all kinds of foods. As you can see, pastas and stir fries. These are some of the foods that we prepare and eat. So if you join a Food for Life class in your area, you will see the instructor prepare these foods right in front of you. You get to eat them, and you get a 2-hour lecture on nutrition. We have a diabetes series that runs in 4 weeks at a time, meeting once a week, 2 hours. And we have a cancer series that's also 4 weeks, and a Kickstart series, which I teach usually now in 3 classes. Other instructors may teach it in 5 classes. The next webinar I have coming up is going to be plant-based on a budget and meal planning. We're also going to include how to cook without oil in this webinar, and it will be March the 16th. So I encourage you to join us with that one. You can register online at my website. I love this quote from the father of medicine himself: "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food," from Hippocrates. He had it all those years ago, and we are still learning from him. I encourage you to go online, maybe even as soon as you get off of here, and watch the trailer on YouTube for Eating You Alive. It will help encourage you, and then maybe you can go and watch the full thing as far as other people's experiences with changing to a plant-based diet, and even hearing many of the doctors and scientists as far as the research goes. So thank you so much for tuning in to this. I hope that you've learned some information that maybe you didn't have before. If you have questions, please just contact me. My contact information is on my website, and I hope to see some of you in other webinars. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day. Bye.